Is the American dream still attainable for everyone in today's society? It's a question that's been on the minds of many, especially those who identify as middle class. Let's take a look at the current state of the American middle class, a segment of the population that has long been considered the backbone of the country's economy. It's a group that's diverse, dynamic, and crucial to the nation's economic stability. But today, the middle class is facing a slew of challenges. The cost of living, from housing to healthcare, is constantly on the rise. It's becoming increasingly difficult for middle-class families to make ends meet, even with full-time employment. This is compounded by the fact that wages have remained stagnant for years. While the prices of goods and services continue to climb, paychecks have largely remained the same. This wage stagnation is not just affecting the ability of these families to keep up with their bills, but it's also impacting their ability to save for the future. Then there's the issue of increasing debt. From student loans to credit card debt, middle-class families are finding themselves in a never-ending cycle of owing money. This debt burden is not merely a financial issue, but it's also a mental and emotional one, causing stress and anxiety for many. And let's not forget the elephant in the room, the widening wealth gap. The upper class continues to amass wealth at an alarming rate, while the middle class struggles to stay afloat. This wealth disparity is not only alarming, but it's also unsustainable for a healthy economy. So, what does this all mean? It means that the middle class, once the epitome of the American dream, is facing an uncertain future. It means that the promise of upward mobility, of a better life for those who work hard, is becoming more elusive. These issues raise a pressing question. Is the middle class in America shrinking? Consider the Johnson family from the Midwest, a typical middle-class American family. They live a life most of us are familiar with. John, the father, works a steady 9-to-5 job, while Mary, the mother, juggles part-time work and raising their 2 children. They're hardworking, they're diligent, they're epitomes of the American dream. Yet, for all their efforts, they're treading water financially. Stagnant wages have been their reality for years. Despite John's steady employment and Mary's part-time job, their income hasn't kept pace with the growing costs of living. Each paycheck seems to stretch a little less than the last. Healthcare, once a given, has become a luxury. The Johnsons, like many middle-class families, have seen their health insurance premiums skyrocket. Each doctor's visit, each prescription filled, chips away at their budget, leaving them with less to spend on other essentials. Education, a path to upward mobility, now feels like a road to financial ruin. The Johnsons worry about how they'll afford college for their kids. The cost of tuition has far outpaced inflation, transforming what should be a stepping stone into a daunting financial hurdle. Housing, a symbol of stability, is increasingly out of reach. Despite working full-time, the Johnsons struggle to keep up with their mortgage payments. The dream of homeownership, once a cornerstone of the American middle class, feels increasingly elusive. Saving for the future, investing for a comfortable retirement, these concepts feel like distant dreams for the Johnsons. Each month is a balancing act, a struggle to keep their heads above water. The Johnson family represents millions of American families grappling with these same issues. They're not alone in their struggles, they're not outliers. They're the faces of the middle-class meltdown, a crisis that's reshaping the American economic landscape. They're the embodiment of a system in dire need of change. A system that, for too long, has overlooked the backbone of the American economy, the middle class. Now, meet the Martinez family from the West Coast, another face of the American middle class. The Martinez family is a snapshot of a growing reality for many middle-class households. Living in a bustling city, they're caught in the throes of job insecurity and the increasingly prevalent gig economy. Mr. Martinez, once a full-time employee, now finds himself juggling multiple part-time jobs with no benefits or job security. His wife, Mrs. Martinez, works as a freelance graphic designer, her income fluctuating from month to month, making it hard to plan or save for the future. Their struggle with job insecurity is a direct result of the shift towards a gig economy, where full-time employment is being replaced with contract-based, part-time, and temporary work. This new economic model has left them, like many others, grappling with an unstable income, devoid of the benefits that once came with full-time employment. But their challenges don't end there. The Martinez family is also wrestling with a mountain of debt. From student loans to credit card bills, the burden of debt weighs heavy on their shoulders. They're caught in a vicious cycle, borrowing to make ends meet, only to find themselves deeper in debt. Moreover, the dream of owning a home, which was once a given for the middle class, is now a distant reality for the Martinez family. The soaring price of real estate coupled with their unstable income has made homeownership an elusive dream. They find themselves stuck in the rental market, spending a significant portion of their income on housing, with no end in sight. The Martinez family's struggle is a stark reminder of the harsh realities facing the middle class today. It paints a picture of an America where job insecurity, debt, and the inability to afford a home are becoming the new norm for many. The Martinez family story is an all-too-common narrative in today's economy. What are the economic factors contributing to these struggles? Let's delve into this pressing question. To begin, we must acknowledge the relentless march of inflation. As the cost of living continues to rise, the purchasing power of the middle class is steadily eroded. Imagine if a loaf of bread cost $1 last year and this year it costs $1.10. That's a 10% increase. Now if your income hasn't risen by at least 10%, you're going to feel the pinch. Next, let's talk about wage stagnation. If your paycheck isn't growing while everything else is getting more expensive, you're effectively earning less. This has been a reality for many middle-class families for the past few decades. Wages have remained relatively flat, even as productivity has increased. In essence, people are working harder, but not seeing a corresponding increase in their paychecks. Now let's turn our attention to the rise of the gig economy. This new model of work offers flexibility, but it's also unpredictable and often lacks the benefits and protections of traditional employment. It's not uncommon for individuals to juggle multiple gigs just to make ends meet. This can lead to financial instability and makes it harder for middle-class families to plan for the future or save for emergencies. Lastly, we must consider the impact of these factors on the ability of the middle class to maintain their standard of living. The rising costs, stagnant wages, and uncertain work conditions make it increasingly difficult to afford necessities, let alone luxuries. As a result, the middle class is finding it harder to keep up with the proverbial Joneses, and many are slipping into the lower economic brackets. All these factors combined have created a perfect storm that's reshaping the landscape of the American middle class. It's not just about numbers or economic jargon, it's about real people, real families who are finding it harder and harder to hold on to their slice of the American dream. These economic factors are contributing to a significant shift in the American middle class. What are the policy implications of this shift in the middle class? The answer to this question lies at the heart of our future as a society. The decline of the middle class has profound implications that demand swift and significant policy changes. Firstly, we must address wage stagnation. For far too long, the middle class has been caught in a vice grip where wages have remained stagnant while the cost of living has skyrocketed. If we are to remedy this, we need policies that ensure a fair wage for all workers, policies that are tied to productivity and inflation, so that as the economy grows, so too do the wages of the hardworking middle class. Secondly, we must tackle the escalating cost of living. From housing to healthcare, education to energy, the cost of essential goods and services has outpaced wage growth, plunging the middle class into an ever-deepening financial crisis. Policies must be put in place to control these costs, ensuring that the basic necessities of life remain within reach for everyone, not just the well-off. But it's not just about wages and costs. Job security is another critical piece of the puzzle. In an era of rapid technological change and globalization, the middle class has been left vulnerable to job loss and displacement. Policies that promote job security, such as those that encourage lifelong learning and skills development, are crucial to protecting the middle class from further erosion. Lastly, we must prioritize policies that promote economic mobility and equality. The promise of the American dream, the idea that anyone, regardless of their background, can climb the economic ladder, seems more and more like a distant memory. It's time to rekindle that dream, with policies that level the playing field and give everyone an equal shot at success. Without significant policy changes, the struggles of the middle class may continue to worsen. The time for action is now. Let's ensure that the middle class, the backbone of our society, remains strong and vibrant for generations to come. What does the future hold for the American middle class? If we gaze into the crystal ball, we might see an image that's not so heartening. Based on current trends, the future of the middle class could be fraught with increased inequality and economic instability. The gap between the rich and the poor is widening, and the middle class is getting squeezed like never before. In the coming years, it's conceivable that the middle class will continue to shrink. The rise of automation and artificial intelligence, for instance, is expected to displace many middle-class jobs. Without significant policy changes, these technological advancements could lead to job losses and wage stagnation for many middle-class workers. Moreover, the cost of living is escalating, especially in urban areas. Housing, healthcare, and education costs are all on an upward trajectory. For the middle class, these rising costs could mean a future where the American dream of homeownership, access to quality healthcare, and a college education for their children becomes increasingly out of reach. But let's not paint an entirely gloomy picture. There are potential solutions, and they lie in the hands of policymakers. We could see a future where policies are put in place to protect middle-class jobs from automation, to provide affordable healthcare and education, and to ensure that the wealth of the nation is more evenly distributed. This would involve a significant shift in the way we approach economic policy, but it's a potential future that could secure the survival of the middle class. At the same time, it's crucial to recognize that the middle class is not just an economic group. It's a cultural and social phenomenon, a symbol of stability and opportunity. The erosion of the middle class could trigger a ripple effect throughout society, affecting everything from political stability to public health. So, what does the future hold for the American middle class? It's a question that's hard to answer definitively, as it's tied to a multitude of factors, many of which are in flux. But one thing is clear: the future of the American middle class hangs in the balance. We've explored the struggles of the American middle class, but what can be done? In the past quarter hour, we've delved into the realities faced by the American middle class. We've walked in the shoes of the Johnson family and the Martinez family, both emblematic of the struggles and aspirations of millions of households across the nation. We've examined the economic factors that are precipitating this crisis, from stagnating wages to rising costs of living, and we've highlighted the policy implications that these issues bring to the fore. We've seen that the middle class, once the backbone of the American economy, is now feeling the squeeze from all sides. They are facing mounting pressures from rising healthcare costs, ballooning student debt, and a housing market that is increasingly out of reach. At the same time, wage growth has been sluggish, failing to keep pace with inflation. But this is not just a story of struggle. It's also a story of resilience. It's a narrative that underscores the importance of the middle class in upholding the American dream, in driving economic growth, and in fostering social stability. We've seen how the middle class is the bedrock of our society, the engine of our economy, and the custodian of our shared values. So what can be done? The answer lies in a combination of policy changes and economic reforms. We need to rethink the way we approach issues like education, healthcare, and housing. We need to invest in our human capital to ensure that each generation has a chance to do better than the one before. We need to create an economy that works for everyone, not just those at the top. In the end, the fate of the American middle class will shape the future of the country as a whole. It's a future that we can shape, but only if we have the courage to confront these issues head-on, and the will to make the necessary changes. Because the middle class is more than just a demographic. It's an idea, a promise, a way of life, and it's worth fighting for.